Google X is live. We're live. It is now the last presentation, as I said, and by no means the least, for our AVConf 2018. We've had a big, long day of presentations from all sorts of people all over the world. It's been a great day. And but to cap us off with a little nightcap, we've got Will, who's going to talk to us about the Y project. Take it away, Will.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Okay. Why is something I've been working on for a long time. It's essentially a way for somebody who's being paid to donate some of that payment to something that the person who's paying them thinks is important, in order to share wealth and to attract custom. That's the idea behind it, and it does it in a way that means that neither payee nor payer have to trust each other that donation actually gets made, because you can imagine that the payer might never make the donation, or the payee might go, yeah, I'll make a donation, and then they get the money and they never actually do it. So Y is about making sure that neither of those two have to trust each other, and they don't, or like there's no need for a third party even for the same thing. So it's possible that they could trust a third party to do that, but then you'd have to rely on the third party being in business to facilitate that transaction. So it's about making something that's resilient for that process to happen. Because I personally believe that process is extremely important. It means that there's a backstory to why I started doing Y in the first place, but maybe we can talk about that like some other time. And this is what I was talking about, the separation of concerns. I think the status of Y at the moment is it's a GitHub repository. It doesn't have a working website where you can just use it, and I think that's probably the most important thing. Yeah, so if we go to the repository, yeah, it's a very small repository. The code of Y itself, you can click on, if you click on contracts there.
Is it, or should I be here?
It doesn't matter. I think they're exactly the same at the moment.
The big difference is that the one here doesn't have a README, whereas
that's interesting. Why has that happened? Because anyway, okay, I don't know why that's happened.
They're on slightly different. I think it may be because because the default branch, on the Agile Venture site has been set to develop rather than master. But yes, go into contracts. Yes,
and click on y.sol, and that's all the code. It's about 40 lines of code. Yeah, and that handles that does that process that I've described. So it's a really small piece of code, but in the last few months, that's been written in a test-driven way. So we've got tests for it in another file. But this is code that only runs on a blockchain, so it's not easy to just set it up and start using it. So I think the next step for the project is going to be to make an interface for it, so that so that anybody can just say, okay, I'm going to accept Ether for this one transaction, and I want the person paying me to pay something to something they care about, so I'm going to use Y for that. At the moment, that's not possible, and I've been focusing a lot on how to make it like shiny and how to make it work for everyone, but I think it just needs to work for someone first of all. Yeah, just let me open my notes.
Yeah, I thought you showed me previously there was a little demo interface that we could use to like do a transaction and so on, but
yeah, so those have been useful for, well, I can't, so it's been such a long time ago that I used any of those that I don't remember the URLs now. I think what it really needs is to be set up to work properly. So if you wanted to use it properly, you could. Because it feels as though it would be a shame if somebody asked me if they could use it, if they understood what it was doing, and then they couldn't actually just start using it. I think there was a demo website that did like a demo transaction, but I'm talking about having a proper website where they could use it for real. I'll just so the technology behind it is Ethereum, and Y is a smart contract, which is how it manages to handle this transaction in a way that neither party has to trust each other. I think it's a very good use case for a smart contract. So I'm really excited about the project from that point of view. I think that if it was more popular, it would be a great like technology demo for what you can do with a cryptocurrency, and why cryptocurrencies are important. Because otherwise, all of these kind of transactions would have to be facilitated by banks and by institutions that would have to continue to stay in business. Yeah. Okay. So I have some plans for Y. I'm going to rewrite the README on the project because I don't think it does as good a job of explaining why it's unique and exactly what it is. There's actually a security vulnerability that's been highlighted by GitHub that I can see when I log in. I think it's one of the dependencies, and I think it might be one of the integrated, like the development environment dependencies. So that just gives me another reason to drop Truffle. And to try and find some users. I know that I'm pretty confident that if I had the opportunity, I would be able to use it for to accept money for private business. But say, okay, so I've got a job coming up soon, and I'll be paid a salary through an HR department for that. How could I use Y to be paid? Could I give away 10% of my salary post tax to something that my employer cares about? That's one direction that I'm interested in. Initially, I've also been looking for people who can use this, who are already accepting Ether, because those people are not going to have, like, they're the people with the least friction for adopting something like this, because there's no separate step for them of buying Ether to use this technology. So I found some businesses locally which accept Ether. I haven't had a reply from one of them, and I'm yet to write to the other. And I think before I write to the next one, I'd like to have a URL basically that I can send to them, so that they can look at the project themselves and go, okay, I understand what this is doing. I think a big problem for crypto in general, including this project, is that if you want to use it, there's a separate step involved to buy. So if you want to send money to somebody, you have to first buy the money. It's like buying francs so that you can send francs. You've got to buy Ether so that you can then send it. And so it's not abstracted away. If you want to just send money to somebody, you have to understand that you're changing currencies. And I think that's a problem for crypto in general. And that's something else I'm also interested in solving. It's not unique to this project. And there are some projects that are in that vein, but they all seem quite like they've been static for a year or more. And I think that's because some of them were waiting for banks to come on board. And I'd really like to see that there are faster ways than waiting for banks for this technology. So if I go back to my example, would my employer would my employer take the time to buy Ether so that they could send Ether to me via a smart contract? that's less likely than if it was all abstracted away from them and they could just, I could give them a sort code and account number that would work the same way, in an automatic way. That would be much better. So I think that's an important dependency for this project. Yeah, I mean, I've thought even, because the only alternative is to say to them in my contract, this is how you must pay me, and I'll give you a URL to pay me. That would be an interesting thing to try, I suppose. Yeah, so these are the kind of difficulties I've had trying to fit it into how people work normally. Yeah, I guess there's always the question of, is it just me who's bothered about using this kind of thing? And that goes back to why I started doing it in the first place. I guess I should talk about that, because I think that's important to understand the motivation behind it. I basically don't have a vote in the UK, even though I'm a citizen with a passport. I don't have a vote in this country because of the way our voting system works. My vote has significantly less power than it would if I lived somewhere else in the country. So, like, if I wanted my vote to count more, I'd have to move somewhere. I'd have to move somewhere else within the country. And that's what started me down this path of how can I get better political representation for myself. And millions of other people like me who don't vote for the main two parties, which is what our voting system encourages. And then it was in campaigning for political changes that I realized that really money is the thing that is directing politicians. So that's really how the idea for why came together. I read that you can take a very small percentage from each transaction in the economy, and that would pay for that would raise as much money as tax does now. So like at 0.35%, you can raise the same amount of money as tax does now if you take that off of every transaction. So that really inspired me to think, okay, well, if I just took a tiny bit of percent off of a transaction, and I've got choice of where that goes to, then that gives me some kind of political representation. And maybe the person who I'm buying from would be interested in making that donation, if it would mean that I'm more likely to buy from them than someone else. And then, if their competitors saw that was happening and enough people were interested in that, then there'd be some competition that would drive up the donation percent. And so that's the idea. That's like the thing that motivates me, is that I feel like the only thing stopping this working is like market forces, or that it would benefit from market forces. There's nothing I'd have to do after it was established to make it, like, to give us all political representation. Yeah, rather than having to wait for 5 years and then not get a vote in some of our cases. Yeah, and I guess finally, I think that the ability for it to be able to donate across borders should mean that money can flow more easily between borders, between countries. So if there are 1% of transactions in a rich country, then that would mean a lot. That money would mean a lot to a poorer country, and even if they were sending money across borders for the same in the same way, their 1% would mean like there'd be a net equality over time. So yeah, I just feel like if you support public services in your own country, then on principle you should support them. You could support them anywhere. There's only the fact that at the moment your tax is paid centrally to people who decide what to do with it centrally, that limits that like empathy that you have for people across other borders. Yeah, and I don't know. I've been quite unstructured there. I've just tried to follow my own train of thought, and I hope like that some of that makes sense, but it would be great to have some questions about it, because I've been like really close to this project and not stepped away from it. So it's really helpful for me to hear the stupidest questions, if you can call them that, because it gives me a better idea of what I should be doing or what I should be concentrating on. It's always helpful to hear what new people think. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So on that note, I don't know if Mariam, Matthew, or Raoul, who's also joined us, have got any questions on the Y project. We'll also go out to the conference channel and ask if there are any questions for Will. I guess if Matt and Raoul and Mariam don't immediately have any questions for Will, yeah, I guess the thing that I'm, immediately think of is that even if thinking about it from the sort of philosophical tax perspective, is even if Y was in place, we'd still be paying a lot of tax to central government.
Yeah. So initially, it would only be, the donations would only be complementing tax.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And then, but the idea would be that over time, if those donations increased because of competition between sellers for sales, then there would be like mounting pressure for the government to reduce the tax burden. Because if the public services are being funded in an alternative way, then they'd basically be competing with that. So they could, so a party that says, okay, all of this money from donations is now funding like a quarter of our public services, so we can reduce tax by a quarter. That party is going to get more votes because tax will be reduced. And typically with the percentages we're talking about, so we're taxed at like 20 to 40% income tax. But the percentages that would be required to raise the same amount of money on transactions is something like 1%. So you could take 10% off of income tax for like a 0.25% increase with the donations, because there are so many transactions compared to how much income there is.
Right. That is the assumption. There seems to be that people would be donating to support public services. So if we say public services like the NHS or the social workers or what the council is doing and so on. I mean, at the moment, I mean, I'm sure the local council would not turn me down if I tried to give them some money, but it's not a sort of charitable cause that one can donate to in a general sense, is it?
Yeah. Okay. So think of like hospital wings.
Yes.
That get built by big donations. So so these channels aren't open at the moment, but they are possible. The distinction really between charities that do take donations and public services is just political. So like Red Cross, when A&E gets busy, then the government asks the Red Cross to come and help them out. So the work that they're doing isn't fundamentally different. It's just where the government draws the line around what's a public service versus what's a charity.
Right.
So yeah, so really that line will bend to market forces. It will bend to it's not fixed, basically.
No. I mean, I think what it makes me think of is that there's a lot of people who do already spend a lot of time and money certainly in the UK and other countries giving to charities, and pretty much most hospitals have their own sort of non-profits and charities and so on, and do rely heavily on that the income from their charitable arms to do lots of important things. But so then I think it comes down to the biggest challenge here is, if we take it that this small, nearly negligible sort of levy on transactions, because of the process of the scale that it's at, would be sufficient to outweigh all the charitable giving activity that we have going on already, to further encourage the government to reduce taxes. That it needs to be inserted in such a way that the majority of transactions take place over it, and that would seem to be the biggest challenge. In that, at the moment, there doesn't seem to be much move for the majority of transactions to come over cryptocurrency. But that's I guess that's a separate issue about what would allow the majority of transactions to start taking place over a cryptocurrency framework like Ethereum, where such sort of smart contracts could be employed. But I guess that's, in some ways, that's sort of neither here nor there. Then, if you have a proof of concept of it working with Ethereum, then that's the kind of thing that gets people excited about wanting to move into that space, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you can make it work, that's exactly it. Yeah. And so I think having it being available for like immediate use is the top, should be the top priority.
Right.
And that sounds obvious I think we developed the contract a few months ago, and then I think I thought that we were looking at talking to Coinbase, because we thought that we could integrate it with what they've already got. A big challenge with online payments is the handling the details of the address, for instance. And Coinbase have got that all sorted out. Like, we wouldn't have to worry about that. I contacted Coinbase, and they're not interested for the meantime, because they're busy on just getting what they are doing working. First of all, they're rolling out cryptocurrency payments. My prediction is that no one will adopt that as it stands, because no business wants to accept Ether while it's volatile. And like, having a smart contract that does something unique would give you one more reason would give you a reason to use it. It's still, though, I think it's only a small thing compared to how volatile the currency is. It depends what the nature of the business is. If they think they could attract loads of customers by making a donation on the transaction, then they might be willing to take the risk. So I think we'll wait for Coinbase to launch their product before contacting them again about this. But so in the meantime, I suppose we could try and just make it work so that it doesn't just forgetting about like people swapping addresses and things. Let's just pretend it's me getting my salary, or just any payment where it doesn't really matter about identifying who the payer was, because who it was, because it was a one-off, let's say. I think that's been, that direction of development hasn't been explored yet. That use case hasn't been explored. I think I've been trying to build something bigger than what's necessary, because I haven't thought of all the use cases for payments and where this would slot in. I think the most sensible ones would be somebody who's already a business that's already accepting Ether, but they have to be excited about donating some of that transaction. And I think that some of the businesses who are accepting Ether are doing it just because of the volatility, because they think that they're going to make money by accepting it. So they're kind of gambling with their business a bit. But that seems to be that's something I've heard from business people, is that's a reason to accept it. So perhaps I should look more at these just one-off payment use case.
I think what you were saying before about how reaching out to businesses, particularly the ones locally that are accepting it, and getting them to integrate it, that seems like kind of key. So what can people do if they want to get involved in the Y project? What's the best way to contribute?
Yeah, okay. There is a mob on it every other week, which hasn't been happening recently because I've been busy and there hasn't been anybody else interested on the projects recently. There's a GitHub page. There's a channel on AV Slack. So if you're interested, then contact me and we'll sort something out that's mutually convenient. I think at the moment the Y mob was 5 p.m. on a Thursday, bi-weekly. But if you're interested, then just contact me and we'll sort something out that works for all of us. Because it's time to start again, really, in terms of like a development effort. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Will. Any further comments or questions from Mariam, Matthew, or Raoul?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that I've been participating in the Ethereum mob, and that's been really cool. So that's why I came here to the. It sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming to try to, when you're new to Agile Ventures and just trying to find projects to contribute to and trying to find time and all that kind of stuff. So I think this has been really amazing the whole day. But and being able to come and hear you talk about why, Will, and yeah, hopefully those Ethereum mobs will lead into contributing to why, especially since you're talking about taking up some more development in pair programming and stuff.
So. Yeah, cool. So yeah, the Ethereum mobs are on they're on Monday normally, aren't they? But this week it's going to be on Thursday at 7 p.m. So that's I can't remember what that is, UTC.
Plus UTC plus 1.
That's 7 p.m. So 6 p.m. UTC.
So maybe the Y mob will happen before the Ethereum mob?
I suppose so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This week that would work really great for me then, because then you can have I like having a couple hours to be thinking about the same language.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that would be 4 p.m. 4 p.m. UTC. Yeah. Okay. I can. I'll set that up. 4 p.m. UTC for the Y mob on Thursday.
All right. Great stuff. Well, the party doesn't have to end right now. I think it has to end for me personally, but of course you folks can stick around and hang out. We've had a big long day full of presentations from people all over Agile Ventures. They've all been recorded. They've all been streamed. We will put together a playlist. Make sure that's shared so you can relive the exciting moments of the day. Who needs the World Cup when you've got Agile Ventures, eh? Yeah, thanks so much to Will and all of our speakers today, and also everybody who's turned up to ask questions and get involved. Look forward to seeing lots of everybody going forward. I'll just do what we do, which is turn off the broadcast. We can have all the really exciting discussion off the stream. Ha 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 ha. There we go.